Hello and welcome to the director's audio commentary track for Night of the Creeps. My name is Michael Felsher. I'm with Red Shirt Pictures. I'm the DVD producer that is responsible for the commentaries and the interviews on this DVD. And I am privileged and pleased as all hell to be sitting next to the film's writer-director, Mr. Fred Dekker.
Thanks, Michael. Here we go.
This has been a very long time in coming.
Yes, it has. You know, I think anybody in the movie business who claims not to have practiced their Oscar speech is lying through their teeth. And I have to say, I would be lying if I said I haven't practiced these first few words of this DVD, because that's how long it's taken. I love DVD commentaries, particularly like Robert Rodriguez, so I may talk fast sometimes just because there's a lot to say, a lot of information.
That's what people are listening to.
And that's right, exactly, because I'm a big fan. This title sequence was designed by Ernie Farino,
who's well known for these sort of things, a long history.
Great special effects guru, a director himself, and he had also done the first Terminator film. And I was a big fan, and what he did here was I asked him to do a kind of Famous Monsters of Filmland logo, and we designed that, and then he shot, I think he matted satin, I think it was, and had a fan blowing on it and overcranked it, so that's what you're seeing there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is back pre-CGI, so I have to kind of blend the real and...
It's all analog, and I think probably these rolling credits were influenced by The Shining.
Oh, of course, yeah, absolutely.
Kubrick is a big hero of mine, and I'll point out the Kubrickian compositions in the film, of which there are many. One in particular that I wanted to do a whole scene in one shot, and the studio said, you know, maybe some editing here would help.
Now, this film is a tribute to many different genres, and now you're starting off with the alien films, you know, space adventures.
Yes, and in retrospect, it's just what a crazy, crazy idea, because we'll never see these little critters again. This actually was a real object lesson for me as a filmmaker, because I knew that didn't want to do them stop motion, so I was left with the question, how do I make them somehow different? So I thought of putting little people in costumes. And it didn't occur to me that it would get a laugh from the get-go. And the first time we showed the film to an audience, as soon as that little guy turned the corner, we got a huge laugh. And I hadn't intended that. And as a first-time director, it was really instructive, because what it does is, by accident, it's kind of brilliant by accident, it gives the audience license to laugh.
Right, so they know right off the bat.
At any time for the rest of the movie, it's okay if you think it's funny.
Yeah, you know, don't take this too seriously.
Exactly. Sees a zombie. Did you see his?
Yeah, his eyes are clouded
eyes.
Over, yeah. One of the many details you might not have caught because all you've had are VHSs and bootlegs.
That's right. Now you can actually see things. The spaceship effects were done by David Stipe Productions, and years later, David used that spaceship in an episode, I think, of Deep Space Nine.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah. And I met him briefly when I was working on Star Trek Enterprise.
The sound design of this film is also very heightened, and, you know, like even with the tube floating through space to woo, 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 woo. I mean, was it a deliberate choice on you to really kind of crank this thing up to a certain level, or was it something you were just kind of experimenting with?
You know, the sound element is always fun, because you have a whole new palette. So we had a lot of fun with the mix on this movie. And I just want everybody to know, if you've seen the movie Pleasantville, this was way before then. And I really like the idea of doing a black and white sequence and then having the credits be in color.
Right.
Also, you'll see that sort of Famous Monsters font going on there.
Yeah, the creepy font.
Yes. Now, this is one of our two major locations for the entire picture. This is the actual fraternity row at USC. The University of Southern California. Now, what's interesting, I went to UCLA, and at UCLA, the sorority row is on one side of the campus, and the fraternity row is on the other side of the campus. But for some insane reason, at USC, the sororities are on one side of the street, and the frats are on the other side of the street. Oh. So much tomfoolery can occur.
Yeah.
This is Ken Herron as Johnny. And I don't know if I knew this while I was making it. This is Catherine Britton. She was in Back to the Future.
Oh, all right.
She comes out to the farmhouse. She's the farmer's daughter.
Oh, right.
Marty McFly
the Lone Pine Mall farm.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
There's Leslie Ryan. I asked Leslie out, and she turned me down. So, hi, Leslie.
And yeah, there's Alice.
Alice Cadigan, interestingly, later married Jeffrey Combs, who I worked with on Star Trek Enterprise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I saw her at a wrap party. The point I was going to make before is that this whole section is intended to be sort of a bad 50s, sci-fi movie. And so, nothing against the actors, but when the acting isn't quite up to snuff, or it's a little overplayed, or it doesn't really work as well as it might, it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, it's very arch. It's very stylized.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the one thing about watching this segment of the film is that you film this, and even the shot compositions, the acting styles are very 50s.
Yeah.
You don't see this later repeated in the 80s section of the movie.
Although this moving camera that you see a lot is sort of just my style.
Mm-hmm.
Say, which one is the brightest star?
Hey, haven't you kids heard the radio? Some nutbar on the loose, so I said...
I really like this performance.
I believe that's Tom Atkins.
Young Ray Cameron.
Yeah.
He's clearly really rattled by this moment, and it sets the stage for Detective Cameron.
Just go home, will you? Just go home.
I don't know if I'd want to be in charge of trying to cast a young Tom Atkins. That's a hard...
Yeah. It really came down to maybe two or three guys,
no, really.
that looked and felt enough like him and that could actually also act. Because in a strange way, he has the most to do in this scene, even though he's only got 2 lines.
Right, yeah.
This is Griffith Park. This isn't. This is an optical. But Makeout Point is Griffith Park, which is a very popular place to shoot in Los Angeles.
Oh, sure. Yeah, just
basically,
the vantage point up there is amazing.
Any television or show or movie that you've seen, at some point or another probably uses it.
So now there's the old standby, the meteor crashing in from outer space. It's not the Blob this time, but something worse.
It came from outer space.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things in sci-fi horror lexicon that I've talked a lot about, how this movie is just kind of a stew of all of these things. And the meteor that comes from space bearing something nasty is kind of a cliche of the genre. And
well, it's an archetype. It's definitely a standby.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was the thing about when you were writing this film. I remember you mentioning to me that it was really just made a list of things you'd want to see in a movie.
Right.
And
including the 57 T-Bird convertible, powder blue. Although, of course, it's black and white here.
although you do see this sequence, technically a part of the sequence in color during the dream sequence.
That's right. You'll see the actual color of the car later on.
You stay here.
Now,
See the overlit 50s look? It's he
yeah.
doesn't even need the flashlight, really. But I'm really pleased with this shot, and this was a lot of fun. Particularly as a young director. I was 26 years old, and we came out to Griffith Park, and the key grip looks at me, and I said, I want 50 feet of track. And this is not level.
No, it doesn't.
So
Yeah, he's climbing up. Yeah.
Right, so they have to put up apple boxes, and they have to make sure that it's level. And
not an easy thing to do.
From the King Newsroom, police continue the search for a 35-year-old escapee from the Crest Ridge Mental Institute, who officials
I've got a lot of ambivalence about this movie because I see all my mistakes. This particular section, I think, works pretty well. And I'll be very candid about what I think works and what doesn't work. Because too many times on directors' commentaries, you have directors patting themselves on the back, and believe me, this movie's tricky for me to watch.
Well, directors are almost always their own worst critics in a way.
But particularly when it's your first movie and you're sort of learning on the job, because I never went to film school. And I never sort of learned the basics. I was making it up as I went along, based on all the great movies that I had seen. So I was, my teachers were Spielberg and Robert Wise and Stanley Kubrick and all those guys.
And during the radio announcement there, when she flicked on the lights, we see the first of many references to some of your favorite directors in the genre, Corman University, or a tribute to Roger Corman.
Well, Roger Corman had particularly made a series of black and white programmers, which this is sort of a tip of the hat to.
Oh, yeah.
So once I named Corman University in the backstory, I had to use it for the rest of the movie. Can't remember who designed this canister. I may have done the first sketch of it.
Johnny!
I love the shoes. See that he's still wearing the little loafers that he had back
he
in
came
the-
straight from the insane asylum.
Yeah, he's just walking along.
Where he got the fire axe, I don't know. I guess they're just
Well, they're resourceful, these guys.
They're conveniently hanging on the wall at most insane asylums.
Yeah. No danger there.
See, this is genuinely spooky, I gotta say.
Now,
Believe me, I'll tell you when the movie blows, but this is...
This is very... And I have to ask you about this shot, because when I first saw the movie, the perspective is there's no way he didn't hit her.
You know what? I gotta be honest, I don't remember how we did this. I think probably he's aiming for just behind her neck. But in other words, he follows through. He may pull back a little bit. I think he may follow through, but he's still behind her.
Yeah, because normally when some people fake shots like that, you can tell they're hesitating. You cut right before the hesitation.
Right.
It looked like he carried through and just chopped her head right off.
Yeah. And I'm glad that I said 1986, because there's a lot of 80s-ism in this movie, but that kind of takes us off the hook because it's set in the 80s.
Right. So now, why wouldn't it look like the 80s?
And also has to be to dovetail with Cameron's backstory.
Mm-hmm.
This is back at USC, the actual fraternity row, and my boys, Jason and Steve, who had quite a lot of fun spending a couple of days at fraternity row when they weren't shooting.
Right. These guys have an absolutely perfect chemistry together on camera. I mean, it's just you believe these guys have been friends from the moment you see them. Was that just luck, or did you see that right away when they were together?
I think filmmaking is catching lightning in a bottle, and the best directors are my heroes are the guys who were overcranking just a little bit to romanticize her, a little bit of slow mo, 48 frames per second. Yeah. My favorite directors, are the ones that can catch lightning in a bottle more often than other directors.
Right.
But a lot of it is subconscious, and these guys, I didn't know that there was going to be this chemistry, but I guess I had to subconsciously have noticed it when they read together.
Mm-hmm. That's the Morton Salt girl. How the hell should I know? Hey, you, honey!
There's a lot of looping in this scene that I'm not crazy about, trying to sort of piece it together and make it work.
Remind me to kill you sometime.
Well, I mean, obviously looping is never your first choice for something in any other.
Well, so did you see that continuity with his hand?
Mm-hmm.
That was, we cut a piece out. There was some pacing issues with this movie that the studio really railroaded me on. And at one point or another, Michael Canu, the wonderful editor of this movie, the more I see it, the more I appreciate him. He and an executive took a pass with me sitting it out, saying, "Okay, let's see what you can do to suck some air out of it." Mm-hmm. And I came back, and everything that I didn't hate, I said that's fine. So that was another cold water kind of moment of first time filmmaking. And so the pace issues in this movie are really first. I love this. This is a big long crane shot, and it's got a lot of life to it. And I think the extras are actually really good in this. But we're taking our time here. This would never
fly today.
You'd never see this in a movie now, where we have this big, long establishing shot. Where are the cuts? Let's cut. But I think it's kind of stylish. But I had a lot of problems with the studio and with myself, where hereafter, all the films after this, I had a stopwatch in my pocket at all times. And what I would do is I'd say, how long should this scene take? Mm-hmm. And now, what if we did it twice as fast?
Right. Well, movies don't take a lot of time to establish relationships or anything without there being, something exploding or some sort of action sequence.
Well, things will explode here. Just be patient, Michael. This is David Oliver, who I'm sad to say we lost many years ago to AIDS.
Oh.
Yeah. He went to high school with a girlfriend of mine.
Oh.
So you're going to come to the game with me sometime?
Maybe.
Now, a scene like this is shot without the music, and everybody, here's the tempo. Okay, folks, dance and enjoy the music you're not hearing.
Right, exactly.
Because we're just recording the principals here. So the more I look at it, it's like, okay, these people are pretty good. There are some extras later in the movie that I'm not so crazy about.
Listen, I think there was a telephone call for you inside.
Whoa! Thanks, dude.
The man with the one eyebrow.
Yeah. No problem. Not the most subtle filmmaking here. I mean, there's a real sort of John Hughes influence.
Very much so. Yeah, he was hitting his stride right around this time.
Yeah, and I think, it was kind of inevitable that I sort of followed his lead on some of this stuff, more so than a lot of other, youth comedies.
Well, I mean, it's very much a product of its time. You know, that's just inevitable.
But one thing that Hughes did, and that I think I did, is we were still sort of in touch with this time in our lives. I mean, I was 26 when I made this.
Yeah, so you weren't that much out of high school and college at all, or anything at that time. So I mean, you know.
I would.
We cut something out there. You'll notice Steve's line there. Tell him that. It's a little too big because there was some dialogue that we sucked out. So he's reacting to something else that she said.
I don't understand how that could have happened. What was your name again? Chad? Biff? Or Viv?
Steve.
I like JC's wardrobe. And we also were asked at the screening here in Austin about the fact that he's handicapped.
Yeah.
And
why was that?
Yeah, and there's no reason except that we just don't see it. You know, you can make a movie with a character who's handicapped without the movie or even the story being about the fact that he's handicapped.
Oh, all right. Okay, she knows her name for starters.
And it does add an interesting dynamic to his character because he's kind of living his life vicariously through Chris.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
But I don't think
You know.
There's the creeping camera. See?
Yeah, it's always moving. It's just kind of
I think I could possibly be in love here.
Of course, you realize there's only one way this girl is ever.
This is actually the Beta House itself. The exterior that we saw them, the backyard where that party was,
right.
The actual house at USC.
Oh.
Talking to her.
The front, which we'll see them come out of, and this is actually inside. Now, whether it is actually the Beta House at USC, I don't know. The Betas were a kind of notorious fraternity at UCLA, so I named these guys after them.
Now let me get this straight.
There we go. Alan Kaiser.
The Bradster. Directly behind him is David Miller, who's our special effects. And actually on both sides are Kurtzman
and Howard?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
Howard
doesn't.
Is Howard in the sequence?
appear
He
to-
doesn't come in until later, I guess.
No.
So you got Robert Kurtz, all have the mullets back then.
Yes. Anyway, for those, what we're talking about is the effects team for the movie, who eventually will become zombies. We cast as the frat boys, because we knew that eventually they were going to become zombies, and rather than hire other, extras who we'd have to come in and do the effects, we knew they'd be in the effects shop anyway, and we're on the payroll. And they all looked like...
They all look like frat boys anyway. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The brothers and I can't make any promises at this point.
I like the art direction in this scene. I wish I had this tiki bar in the back. Stupidly, I didn't say, can I just, would you just give that to me when you're done? The Bulldogs, I forgot that. The Bulldogs is actually a tribute to my high school, the San Rafael Bulldogs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I went to high school in San Rafael, California.
Sincerity of your feelings toward this organization.
We don't have
Miller.
to have sex with a farman.
You'll see his interview on the DVD.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting suggestion. But
Now this was I asked him to replicate a moment that Richard Crenna does in Body Heat, which is really bad directing, just for those of you youngsters. Don't tell actors to do something that another actor did in a movie.
Then you wouldn't want Cynthia anymore. It's not.
I mean, it can work, but it's not the best way to get real behavior. I love that guy I forgot about. There's a guy rolling on the floor.
Yeah.
Because of this new transfer, I see stuff in this movie that I haven't seen in many, many years, and in some cases, stuff I never saw.
Well, there's so many more background details now you can make out. I mean, it's just stuff that you never even knew was there.
Yeah, for good or ill, I might add.
you been?
Oh, rest stuff.
I love that little drop there. Now, she's saying another line there. You can see
Yeah.
her finishing some dialogue, and I recall that was a fight between myself and Bill Finnegan, the executive producer. Look how slow. See, this is a perfect example. Like, David, come on, let's go faster.
Yeah, exactly.
It drives me crazy.
Or they'd have him cut to him already being at the door. You would never actually show him go.
No, I like the move. It's just do it faster.
Right.
Get him down and move faster. And this is a perfect example of me just kind of like, wow, I'm making a movie. Move the camera, and not sort of being aware that later on it's going to just take forever.
Well, I don't know. It's never bothered me.
No. Anyway, Jill's line there, Cynthia is saying something about... It had some innuendo that offended Bill somehow.
About her, having sex with Brad or something like that?
Something about later on we'll have sex. It was something to that effect. And he found it offensive, and so I ended up dissolving before she finished the thought.
Well, you need the digit.
This is Cal State
Did you look for it? I think it's
Northridge.
Ah.
Northridge, California.
Yeah, on the desk, yeah. I'll wait.
And you were one of the first people to use David Paymer in a major.
Well, actually, that's not true. I mean, maybe, but he had been a working actor for a long, long time, and I remember when I would hang out at UCLA long after I graduated. They were shooting a Heart to Heart. Remember that old show?
Oh yeah. Stephanie Powers
and Robert Wagner.
Yeah.
And he was doing a guest bit on that, and it was the first time I ever saw him in person. And then later on, I went, "Hey, I saw you shooting Heart to Heart."
He went on to become Oscar nominated for Mr. Saturday Night.
Now, I was saying earlier there were two major locations for this movie. One of them was the actual fraternity sorority row at USC. The other was an old Woolworths building, an old Art Deco Woolworths that was in North Hollywood, where the TV Academy is right now at Lankershim, if you know LA, at Lankershim and near Chandler. And it was an old building. I guess they were going to tear it down, or they were going to gentrify the neighborhood, whatever. But it was on the chopping block. It was just empty, and it took up half a block. And we leased it and owned it for as long as the production of this movie. And anything that isn't location or sorority fraternity row at USC was built in that Woolworths, including this set and the corridor outside it where we saw Paymer, which is connected. This was all the basement of Woolworths.
Oh.
The alien spaceship at the beginning of the movie?
That was all there, too?
Built on the main floor of Woolworths, yeah. And some scenes that we'll see later, we didn't have to do much work. We actually used the rooms that existed there. There were offices or whatever.
Oh, for like something police interrogation?
In police interrogation, exactly.
Right.
Now, in retrospect, I think it's cool that a cryogenic subject would be standing because it's visually interesting.
Oh, yeah, it's very striking. I mean,
but in reality, you'd probably want him lying down, and it makes for some very awkward staging coming up when they take him out of there. But I remember Steve Miner, who gave me my first job in Hollywood and directed Friday the 13th 2 and 3 and Forever Young and Halloween H2O, a wonderful guy. He shot my second unit on this movie, and he came to the set just, to say hi. And he walked into this set and he goes, "Jesus, not a lot here," because everything's around the periphery of the room. And he felt it was very spare. And ironically, he later did a cryogenic room for Forever Young for Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
So he could fix my mistake.
It's like you take someone while they're alive and you freeze them, and then you thaw them out 100 years later like a TV dinner.
Does the Walt Disney joke? Do people get that?
I think. Oh, they absolutely.
For those of you who don't know, for many years it was rumored that Walt Disney put himself in cryogenic sleep.
Right.
It was sick, and he was going to be frozen until they could figure out a way to make it better.
Now, someone did bring up a good question. I'm not exactly sure what JC could do to help move the body.
I like the jockstrap there. Yes, what could JC do to help move the body? See, now this is kind of slow, but it's okay because this is very Hitchcock.
Yeah.
This is very Hitchcock. Here comes the guy.
Is he going to get there by the time he...
Is he heavy? Yeah. Is he cold?
Yeah, Steve makes fun of me for allowing him to do this bad ad-libbing. But what else are you going to say? What are you going to do?
Nothing, yeah.
Now there, the low angle, wide lens, it's very much my aesthetic. I really like that. When I went on to do Monster Squad, Peter Hyams gave me a lot of grief for that.
Really?
Well, he had a different aesthetic, and I mean, that's a different movie. We talked about that movie before on another DVD, which is available, by the way. But this movie is much more kind of my aesthetic. Wide lenses, kind of bright colors. Those control panels there?
Yeah.
This is interesting. I had made a short student film that actually got me this gig, and one of those panels was actually in it. It was a little science fiction piece, a little 10-minute piece, and one of those was rented from the same prop house. This is actually at Cal State. Outside the room is Cal State Northridge, but this was a set that we built inside the actual Kappa Delta sorority.
Oh.
Now what?
And this is an interesting little 10-minute film school. I love Robert Rodriguez's 10-minute film school, so I'll just occasionally say, here's 10-minute film school. This set was pretty small, but since we built it, we could have pulled those walls out. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to do slow zoom counterpointing slow zoom on both of these guys. And I much prefer to move the camera. I'm not a big fan of the zoom lens. And if I was thinking in pre-production, I would say, pull those walls out and we'll do them separately so I can actually move the camera in on the two guys. But because I neglected to do that, we had to zoom because we didn't have room.
Right.
Because the set had already been built. So that's my little 10-minute film school. When you're in pre-production, think about what you're going to be doing on the day so that you can prepare for it and not have to sort of make it up as you go.
No, you don't even care, because it's important to me that you're happy. Is that so crazy? And if we gotta act like jerks and get in trouble in order to
This
do
is
that,
very, not only strong dialogue, but it's extremely strong performance from both guys, especially Steve here. This is a scene that I've had with friends of mine, where you just kind of lay it out to your best buddy or your best friend and say, look, you're acting like a complete jerk. Did this come from any experience you'd had in your life at all?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had a very close-knit group of friends in college and out of college. And in many ways, I miss it. I miss having friends who tell me that I'm fucking up. Because I haven't had that a lot in the last in the last, since actually I made this movie. When I've done, where I have fucked up. I haven't had people saying, hey, man. So this friendship is, really from me. I didn't comment on the bad art direction there. There's a dead fish behind Jason.
You got the goldfish bowl.
And there's also a oil lamp, which drives me crazy. If it had been a bong, it would have been okay, but it's an oil lamp. So what the hell is it?
And now we are introduced to the man, Tom Atkins, as Detective Cameron, in a very different... Now, there's obviously, I would think... I can't help but think of Jaws here.
Well, Jaws is my favorite movie. Bar none. So obviously there's going to be some influence at some point or another. So yeah, this using the people crossing for the cuts. She's overcranked and we're reversing the film. This is a very stylish little scene. I would say this is my favorite non-dialogue scene in the movie.
Oh, that's great.
See, he's holding her hand there. Her
severed hand.
Because
it's
all
over.
In dreams, things don't make sense. Oh, and now
it's the gun.
It's the gun, but he's still got the corsage.
Yeah.
Freeze!
But who was the person there?
Did you hear the heartbeat on the...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But who was the person there we saw hacking up the body in the back right before the dummy puppet came in?
Good question. I don't know. Don't remember.
Because a couple people did play the killer at different points in the movie.
Yeah.
No, Bozo the Clown.
Well, there's the guy who plays him in the prologue, and then there's the guy who wore the animatronic head.
Right.
Or it wasn't. It was a mask, and then there was a separate one that was the animatronic head. In that last, my buddy Shane Black appears briefly in that last shot. With the cop there.
Detective Ramey.
Detective Ramey, yeah.
Detective Cameron?
Now, this is my attempt to be Mike Nichols, because you will notice from now on there is not a single cut in the scene until the end of the scene.
Yeah, because we just follow him around the room.
Yeah.
And
I was a huge Nichols fan. I loved even Catch-22. And, obviously The Graduate.
What is this, a homicide or a bad B movie?
And he would do long takes. He still does occasionally. He does these very long takes where he lets it all play out.
You're scheduled to work here this evening.
Well, I'd like to ask you about Tom Atkins. Was he someone in your mind when you wrote the part, or was it someone after the fact you thought, oh, well, yeah, let's see if we can get Tom to do this?
What's really interesting is I've only realized this recently. I wasn't as attuned to actors as I am now, and even people who've been in my favorite films. I mean, character actors, for instance, the guy who plays Van Helsing in Monster Squad was in Jason the Argonauts. He was in Lawrence of Arabia. He was in Thunderball. All favorite movies of mine. And I didn't realize until after I made the movie.
Right.
With Tom, of course, I'd seen Halloween 3. Of course, I'd seen Escape from New York. So he was definitely on my radar. But for some reason, I hadn't thought of him for this part. I hadn't thought, oh yeah, he'd be perfect. It wasn't until he came through the door and did the lines. And I think a mistake that directors can make is sort of having a preconceived notion of This is Bruce Solomon as Sergeant Ramey, who I love from Mary Hartman. Mary Hartman was an old show when I was growing up. But directors can make a mistake and have a predisposed idea of who he should look like and how he should speak and what kind of actor you're looking for. And what you want to do is be open enough that somebody can come in and change your mind about it, even to the degree that you cast a different race or a different sex. But Tom came in and he just was that guy. He just was it, and it was great. It was like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
Sorry we had to make it an early night, babe, but we've got some serious pledge humiliation to do.
This is maybe my least favorite section of the movie. It just has I don't know, it doesn't work for me.
Is it a pacing issue for
you?
you?
It's definitely a pacing issue. I mean, basically, this is about the zombie coming to visit. Now, there's a little trick there that I learned from Peter Hunt, who cut the early Bond films. Because he pulled away too slowly, we just cut out every other frame.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that doesn't look speeded up, but it just looks like he's...
It is speeded up, but and it's kind of artificial. You'll see in the early Bond films, Peter Hunt will do that all the time. In From Russia with Love, Bond throws somebody off a boat, and suddenly the boat's going faster and the water's going faster, but who cares?
Right.
We needed that car to get out of there.
Prez, Lori told me to ask you if I could store these in the house till Monday. Is that okay?
We haven't yet talked about Joe Whitlow, who was, of course, cast here as Cindy Cronenberg. Did the character change at all when you saw Jill, or was it just a matter of she's perfect, she's got that innocence and that next door kind of quality for her?
What you said. All those things that you just said.
Yeah.
And what's cool is that later on, when she becomes sort of the kick-ass babe, that was not something that was being done a lot. See how slow this is? I say, come on, even though you're a zombie, let's go faster. Perfect example of. But yeah, I was crazy about Jill. I still am. This is the actual story. Everything you're seeing that's sort of the interior of the sorority is inside the exterior that we saw. It was an actual sorority at USC that for some reason was abandoned.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have been better timing for us. Yeah. We went scouting and we said, what about that house? And they said, it's on the chopping block, or it's up for sale, or, it's not part of the Greek system or whatever. And it was completely gutted and empty, and we just owned it. So all of this is actually inside. Although we'll talk about the reshoots later, we had to rebuild this scene, this set, for, I think, the bit where Detective Cameron faces off with the zombies. Here's a perfect example. Come on. Get to the door. Come on. Now, there's an argument to be made that it's suspenseful.
Right.
But I just look at how slow it is. It's like, come on, let's go.
And, of course, it leads into another staple of the horror genre,
which is cats that I don't think in actual life ever make any sound as they're jumping.
No.
They make sounds and jump, but they're two different things.
Yeah, they don't do it at the same time like that.
But we have to point out that that's a setup for later on.
Yeah, and it's a great set because you have the traditional thing in there, but then you turn it on its ear later.
Yeah. This was a reshoot. This was after principal photography. There's a number of things in the movie that we did after a preview. And this is not the exterior of the sorority, but actually built where? At
the
Woolworths. Now, Jill and I have talked about this fairly recently. The idea here was, are we going to see? Are we going to? Mm-hmm. And we sort of wait until the last beat, and then she turns around. And the idea there is, obviously nudity always makes your heroine more vulnerable. Mm-hmm. But also to tell the audience, we're not going to tell you what we're going to do here. I just saw hair in the frame in that last shot. Is it too late to get rid of that? See?
Yeah, so it's just a composite of all.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, it's just, it's like they blue screened them.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Now, when we were remastering this, I saw this full frame, and Ken is waiting down there to do this scare. It's very funny. Well, that's creepy.
Yeah, very. I was never able really to see the detail on his forehead beginning to open up.
His head's about to explode.
Yeah.
But you'll notice we're not tipping our hand on that. We'll find out later that that's what happens. But never quite been sure where the siren is in Cameron's vehicle, though. But what a great vehicle.
Oh, the Merc, yeah.
And I love his wardrobe, too, because it's the traditional detective trench coat, but he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt under it.
And we know, what's that a tribute to there?
Do you know whose idea that was?
No, I don't.
Tom Atkins.
Really? The stop and smell the rose like that?
He said, what if I stop and smell the rose? I said, you got it, man. It works for me. And then we pay it off at the very end of the picture. Because he's a romantic.
Mm-hmm. But also reminds me of a moment in Plan 9 from Outer Space, oddly enough.
Ah, I hadn't thought about that.
When Lugosi steps out.
Oh, you're
and smells
totally
the rose.
right. I promise that wasn't intended.
Which, of course, is you see later on.
Yes, that's right.
There's
a lot of Plan 9 in this movie. I used the sound of the siren there to motivate his head turn. This is Todd Bryant, who I think is must be producing or directing now, but he was in one of the Star Trek movies. A lot of people who come in and do one line here and one line there. And here's the creeping camera. Now this is behind the real sorority, and there was a structure behind the sorority. It wasn't the House Mother's Cottage. I can't remember what it was, but we turned it into the House Mother's Cottage.
Now, was that intentional? I noticed that the footage of him remembering what he did is grainier. It's almost kind of it looks almost beat up. Was it intentional that the stock kind of looked a little bit grainier? And
that's also why it's handheld. And obviously, anything that takes place in 1959 has to be in black and white.
Oh, sure.
This is Wally Taylor, who, interestingly, I only found out later, not only is he in Escape from New York with Tom Atkins, but he's in the same location, the same scenes. Whenever you see Tom Atkins in Escape from New York, you'll see Wally Taylor in the scene because he works at the prison's main base there. There's Chris Tashima on the left, Oscar winner. My buddy Kevin Pope. And this has always bugged me. It actually isn't a headless body. I mean, there is a head.
There is not much of one left.
Not much of one. This was a great day for me. This was the first day of principal photography.
And you're filming outside in the school there?
I'm filming at UCLA, which is my alma mater, where I literally had graduated from about 2.5, 3 years earlier.
Well, you felt like, hey, I'm back.
And film school wouldn't take me.
Oh, so it's almost like a sweet revenge.
Exactly.
Okay, so we put you up to it. But we said the Phi Omega Gamma House. Not the Kappa Delta sorority. Do
Miller.
You know the difference?
It's all Greek to me.
I just think Jason nails that. He just nails that.
I was kidding.
A lot of girls were seriously freaked out last night because of you.
There's a funny thing. There's a funny bit coming up. One of our second ADs was in the background, sort of making sure that people don't come into the picture. And you can see her right there, frame right, saying, get out of the frame, get out of the frame. And she's the one in the frame, waving.
Was so concerned about everybody else, but forgot about herself in the frame.
Didn't seem to notice that she was actually in the frame. I like that composition.
No, that's great. And of course, if you didn't hate Brad already.
Yeah, I have to admit, in retrospect, probably not the most subtle character development of all time.
Well, I always wonder what she saw in him in the first place.
And who this hop guy here is in the background.
Yeah, I don't know. What's he doing here? A very popular maneuver these days. People loved that.
And here our trio are united for the first time. It's so sweet the way she helps him with this thing. Now there's the tape recorder. See down there that Steve is holding?
Yeah.
We cut it out, but the way we shot it was he actually had taped Brad reading them the riot act there.
And where he admits to, we put you up to it.
Exactly. He admits to it. And then in the scene coming up, the interrogation scene, we had him play the tape back for Detective Cameron. And then, of course, the memo recorder becomes very important at the end of the movie.
It isn't spanky enough.
You mentioned Steve Miner earlier, and here is the janitor named Mr. Miner.
Correct.
Well, he recognizes you. Seems Mr. Miner.
This is actually the second floor of Woolworth's and was an actual office in there. I mean, we basically maybe repainted it.
And put the bars in.
I think the
Well,
bars
the
were
bars
there.
actually already there.
East North Hollywood is not the best. It was never the best neighborhood. But it's the second floor, so why would there be bars on it? Yeah, we probably added those.
Yeah. Unless there's some really tall people in that neighborhood that kept breaking in. It's like, then I can see why.
A body that came from a lab in the basement of the very medical center.
This is very
Mr.
kind
Miner
of,
saw you running out of it 40 miles an hour.
Don't forget screaming like banshees.
I don't know, almost too choreographed for me. He gets up, he goes, he turns.
Well, I think most directors would say these types of scenes are their nightmare. It's just a bunch of people sitting in a room talking. How do you make that visually exciting and interesting?
Well, there's a thing that you see in soap operas a lot, is where people will start to, it'll be, talking heads. So you got your master and you got one person on the left, one person on the right, and then they're close-ups. And you'll see this a lot in soap operas. One of them will get upset and start to leave, and then they'll turn around.
Right.
And then you'll continue with the talking heads, which almost never happens in real life. Do people start to leave and then turn around and
have conversations?
You either talk or you
from-
don't. I mean,
Yeah, and then have conversations 20 feet apart.
yeah.
Or,
Now, Steve was just manhandling the memo recorder there.
Oh, yeah. Because he was playing Brad's confession to let him know what was really going on.
Right.
It was a nervous response.
Mr. Miner screaming like banshees is not my proudest moment.
Why?
Well, I mean, it's not that it's. I don't know if I encouraged him to make it seem sort of like an Asian stereotype, but there's something about it that just rubs me the wrong way. But it's very popular, so for those of you who enjoy screaming like banshees, I forget what I just said.
I always enjoyed it, although I always find it funny that even later on, he's still laughing about it. I mean, apparently he gets no humor in his life at all. I was just, wow.
Well, he's a janitor at a
Yeah, I
university.
guess so.
I mean, where's the fun?
Now, the timing on this is superb. The absolute second that he turns back around, you had Paymer set up. Yeah. Now, was that difficult to coordinate at all, or to make sure he didn't make enough noise that you wouldn't believe he would turn back around?
Well, the beauty of filmmaking is you can actually talk. I mean, Dick Donner, who was a mentor of mine for years, and I watched dailies on Lethal Weapon with him up at his house, and Dick will just, he'll start the end and go, and he'll just start telling the actors what to do.
Sit up now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because you can always take it out of the
that sound
track.
anyway.
Yeah.
The least observant security guard in film history. How do you miss that?
Well, another interesting point there is he says, "I'll see you tomorrow," so he isn't even registering who it is.
Yeah, so he doesn't even,
It's not like another cop who died and turned
Right.
into a zombie. It's like
just some other dude.
It's a scientist from the university.
Screaming.
Now, this doesn't work at all. I don't understand what I was doing here. Where we're behind him,
right,
dollying, so we know something's going to come out, and then we cut to it coming out.
Right.
It's just bad.
Well, you see that a lot. They almost telegraph. It's like, get ready for something's coming.
Yeah, I didn't think it out.
Now, those a lot of times those were pulled by streets, but sometimes these things actually had little motors in them and were just on their own.
Well, both. They were motorized and pulled on strings. That last shot going into the house mother's cottage, we actually was reversed. We started it at the house and pulled it back towards camera and then reversed the film.
Yeah. I mean, it's fast and easy and practical.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't work any better with CGI. It really wouldn't.
Yeah. I just love, I would just hire these really cute girls to do one or two lines. Liz Cox here.
Elizabeth Cox, yes.
Yeah, she is now a newscaster, I believe.
Oh, really?
In the Midwest, yeah. Journalist, I should say.
Hey, babe. It's the Bradster.
His place is even as obnoxious as he is.
Oh, Brad.
And, of course, he's very well known. He was on Mama's Family for a number of years after this, playing one of the sweetest characters.
Yeah.
The nicest guy. So, complete change.
And I colored his hair there for the full...
Did you really?
For the full Aryan effect.
Yeah, it's almost like a phosphorescent blonde. It's like really obnoxious.
Yeah, his hair is actually naturally kind of dark red.
Psych major, isn't he?
I'm not sure if you can actually be a psych major until you're a graduate student, but be that as it may.
Well, I don't think it's ruined the movie for anybody. I don't think anyone's like, damn it, that's not how that works.
Okay, so we've set up Gordon the Cat. Gordon, by the way, is named after the late Gordon Carroll, who was a mentor of mine.
Oh.
Producer of the Alien series and Cool Hand Luke.
Okay. Now we're going to find out Gordon's
Ladies and
not
gentlemen.
well.
Zombie Cat. See, I think Zombie Cat works like gangbusters.
Oh, Zombie Cat's great.
Yeah. Hollywood Pulp there. That's my production company.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Ever notice those pills?
Yeah.
See, just like the dead goldfish in the dorm room, which is not really terrific art direction, the pills is good art direction.
Yeah.
Even I don't know why they're there or what they are.
Yeah, but clearly, I mean, it's probably something to help him cope with whatever the hell he's going through.
Detective Cameron is not a happy camper.
No, well, I mean, if you're looking at your dead girl's, autopsy photos and crime scene photos, this is not what normal people do.
And what's cool is he's obsessed.
He is, completely. Even though he solved it, really, himself.
Yeah.
He still can't get over it. He can't move past it.
Yeah. And the fact that he's trying to tie it to what's happening here on the campus.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. He is the character of what I always loved about the character is that he is the hero of the film in one sense, and he's also sort of the tragic figure. Mm-hmm. He's not well. From the moment you meet him, he's really at the end of his life.
Well, it speaks to an aspect of this movie that I don't know that I was conscious of when we made it, but there's a real melancholy to this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one of the things that makes it work.
It grounds it.
Yeah.
It's not lightweight. I mean, there's so many, you got the slugs and the aliens and stuff, but you've got real emotion driving it.
Exactly. And I appreciate your saying that.
I looked you guys up in the student.
The problem with Jill really is that she's just not cute enough.
Yeah, clearly an issue.
we had to cut around it, but we managed to make it work.
Seriously, she is so unbelievably cute in this movie. You believe that they would do anything for her.
Mm-hmm.
His reaction is probably just what his normal reaction was when he opens the door.
Well, now, I haven't talked to the kids about this, but I'm pretty sure that there was something going on between Jason and Jill.
Really?
Yeah. I did not encourage it.
But how could there? I mean, it just. It would be. I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't.
Well, Peter Hyams told me once that he figured it was probably 80 to 90% of leading ladies and actors in movies in the history of movies
have had something going on.
Yeah.
The one from the lab? It came to my window, you guys.
But it can really become a problem,
Well, sure, yeah.
I thought you'd understand.
Now, obviously, the scene coming up after when JC is attacked is a very highly technical scene.
JC's what?
What
happens?
You haven't seen this movie in a while, have you?
Oh. Spoiler.
Well, I'm sorry. I think anyone listening to this has already had it.
I'm just kidding.
But
Jason pulls that off like gangbusters.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's like yay. But the decision we were just talking about, the gravitas of the movie and emotional, resonance with it, killing off such a likable, lovable character midway through the film.
Well, it's, I think, a staple of horror movies. I mean, look at. I don't know if we love Flyboy and Dawn of the Dead. But boy, man.
When Rydiger leaves a picture, for example, or something like that.
And
yeah.
Psycho. I mean, Hitchcock set the template is if you kill somebody that you like or empathize with.
Right.
As a filmmaker, you're telling the audience that anything can happen.
Yeah, all bets are off.
Yeah, exactly.
And things like...
This is Cal State Northridge.
Something spilled out.
Okay.
I have to say, at the time that we're recording this, we just lost David Carradine.
Yeah.
And David Carradine did a movie called Q, The Winged Serpent for Larry,
Larry Cohen.
For Larry Cohen.
With Michael Moriarty.
Yeah, and there's a great line reading he does in there where Michael Moriarty is this crazy guy telling him that this Mexican mythical winged serpent has laid an egg in the top of the Chrysler building. And he goes, and there was an egg, and it cuts to Carradine and he says, there was an egg. Okay. And I said to Jason, Jason, I want you to do David Carradine from Q.
Okay.
So that's literally where that came from.
That's a great movie, and it's very similar to this movie in some regards. It takes a very different look at a very classic archetype of horror films and science fiction movies.
Now, we did a reverse on Tom here And I can't remember if there's some key information. I guess he heard that whole conversation.
Right, yeah, because that's when he confronts Jason later.
Right, zombies, exploding heads,
creepy
exactly.
crawlies,
Right.
yeah. And now we can read everything that is on this wall.
Yes.
And it turns out that there was some very interesting information.
Jason works the bone.
Jason works the bone.
Yes. There's been a lot of controversy about the gay subtext of this film.
Yeah, and that's something that's only kind of recently, in the last several years, kind of become something people have really noticed or picked up on, I think.
And I encourage it.
Yeah.
I didn't intend it. Now watch the wall in the background here.
Yeah, nothing there.
Behind the miner, nothing on the wall.
Right.
And now when he comes out, it will be mysteriously decorated.
Yes. Well, maybe someone broke in while all this was going on and just had to put some graffiti up on the wall. It was, Andre Gower came in and
there you go.
Monster Squad.
It's tricky. A scene like this is very tricky because the actuality of going to the bathroom, it's unpleasant and strange. And
and he's a crippled character, so he adds another element to it.
Exactly. But it's very, he's very vulnerable. Here we go to the, look around and we'll go to a high, wide angle.
Yeah.
Just to show that you're trapped.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the claustrophobia of the scene is terrific. I mean, it's just...
And also it's so well lit,
Yeah.
Horror movies are all about dark and spooky, and this is just, big fluorescent lights.
Because it's not what you're expecting. It's a well-lit, nothing, what's scary. You can see everything, and yet you can't. Because you're trapped in there with him,
and you don't know where the
those things are coming from, right?
These are all inserts with another actor,
right? Yeah, Steve mentioned that none of those shots are him.
Anything with the arms or the lighting. In fact, you'll see his arms become
very hairy,
hairier than Steve's actually are.
Yeah. Another wonderful detail, thanks to HD.
Aha!
So, fire. They don't like it much. Now, was this a set or is this an actual bathroom that you were working in?
Wow, good question. I think this was a real bathroom.
There, Bill Monster Squad, written on the wall there. A little nod to your upcoming film at the time.
Yeah, I was very full of myself. And this will be my next picture.
Yeah, well, it turned out to be true.
But it was where it ended for a while. This, I think, is the cutest she is in the whole movie.
She gives some looks to him at this point where you don't know how he just doesn't manage to just pass out.
Yeah.
Right after she asks him out, she looks at him.
Yeah. And I recall...
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. And I recall really coaching her through this because she was very much kind of my dream girl in the way that Chris is in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very surreal kind of experience to sort of,
redirect your own life in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's, you can go too far with it like Hitchcock did, but...
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, he lived vicariously in a way through his...
Yeah.
And he had all the psychological issues come to the forefront in all his female characters.
Right. But also in dealing with the actress,
Oh, yeah, well, he had all those issues, And then one of Tom Atkins' great moments in the movie.
Jason gets pretty close to him there.
Yeah, it almost bumps in.
He almost gets a cigarette in the eye.
Creepy crawlies and a date for the formal.
This is classic Spanky.
Classic Spanky.
Now, this is probably my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Well, I think this is the best scene in the movie.
Yeah,
And I've only kind of come to that realization recently.
Maybe.
But I was very pleased with the layout of it, which is you've got I love the Venetian blinds.
Yeah.
I loved it. And this was, by the way, built, his apartment, Cameron's apartment, was an interior at Woolworth's.
It feels, I've always felt his apartment feels like a detective's office.
Interesting.
It has that feel to it, like Bob Hoskins' office in Who Framed Roger Rabbit has that same sort of 40s feel to it.
Philip Marlowe's office.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was intentional. That's why the Venetian blinds are there. But everything outside those blinds is fake.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's not a real exterior. But I was really pleased with this, the way that we laid it out. And
the slow pan behind the bottles.
Well, yeah, the camera's creeping around, and we're doing a complementary move on both Jason and Tom, and the camera's sort of pushing in, but letting them just play the scene.
I found the girl. I found her in the car.
And Atkins is hypnotic in this scene.
Yeah.
He is absolutely hypnotic. He sells the tragedy of the entire character in this one scene.
I also love how the bottle becomes this, this looming element.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the beer can.
Oh, it's everywhere. He's surrounded by
an
alcohol. Yeah.
He's a flat-out alcoholic.
That's what happened next.
And it's an interesting transition here. You're realizing that the person you thought was the big, strapping hero in the film is completely out of his mind.
Yeah.
And the kid sitting across from him was realizing he's pretty much on his own from this point on. It's like
You see, I tracked him.
Well, remember now that Jason's character doesn't really understand the gravity of the situation.
No, he doesn't.
I took my 12 gauge with me. I tracked
Tom's character does, but kind of for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. And it must be very intimidating to have this guy, come to my apartment, let's have some drinks, and I'm going to tell you a story.
Yeah, and then... yeah, at this point, he doesn't even know Jason's sitting there anymore.
That's all real exciting and everything, but listen, I've got to...
In many ways, I got to tell you, Jason's performance is underrated. It's by some...
I agree.
He really anchors the movie.
Yeah.
A lot right behind your girlfriend's sorority. Of course it isn't.
And I've always thought that the editing in this sequence and the composition, the way you shot this, is absolutely brilliant.
And Michael Canoe, we got to hand it to him.
Yeah, I mean, just the way you had that really rough handheld documentary almost style for his memories of the
it works quite
burial.
well. And that little moment, we passed it because we were talking, but there's that little moment where he does that hitch in his voice, where he says, "Your sweetheart went on with her life, and mine got hacked up by a
nutcase."
Yeah, and that is in some ways the proudest moment of my career.
Really,
because I'd written the script, I cast the right guy, I built the right set, I shot it right, and then this little extra added moment of magic from an actor, Tom Atkins. And I remember, almost weeping behind the camera because it was so, so touching and it was so real.
And that one little hiccup, you realize how much he's still hurting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you know who's terrific in this scene? The dog.
The dog is a great... I was going to comment on that later when the dog enters the bus.
Yeah.
It almost looks like he knew he was supposed to be playing in Dead or Lifeless. I mean, it was real. I mean, I'm not kidding. But here I am watching one of the great classic bad movies of all time.
I love this movie. I used to stay up at 3 o'clock in the morning and watch this when I was in college. It was like, Plan 9's on tonight. That was before DVD.
And she's pretty hip to be watching a movie like this.
I think she's just watching I think there's just the glowing pictures. Because why would this woman be watching Plan 9?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm also not crazy about her wardrobe. That was my mistake. She's wearing a frock.
Well,
I guess she's old-fashioned.
From another generation.
Although, I should point out, she was in the prologue. We cut her out.
Oh, really? She was.
But this woman was in the 50s sequence and looked exactly the same.
Oh, okay.
Which was kind of a joke.
Yeah, so she's always been that old. And
yeah. There was a puppet head there that we actually hacked, I think.
That was another question. Did the MPAA cut anything out of the film at all? Was there anything that was dramatically reduced?
No, I think it was pretty much clearly an R-rated movie, and we all agreed. This is the San Fernando Valley, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure Paul Thomas Anderson is shot on this street.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't know which street it is, but I'm sure it might be Magnolia.
I think some frogs rained down in this area here.
But here's Chandler Street. We found this place was real, and it was not that far from the Woolworths. And I said, we got to shoot that. We got to shoot it. And I ended up putting it as a little grace note, a little signature in all my films. You can find fills in my other films as well.
Now, from this point on, the movie just is moving forward like a locomotive. I mean, you've set everything in action at this point.
I think our pace problems have been solved at this point. See this actor on the left?
Yes.
I believe that he is playing young Cameron in those handheld shots of him wrapping the body in plastic. Yeah, I may be wrong, but I think that's the case.
Got to ask about the coroner. Why is he so damn happy every time there's a crime scene? He just seems to be, and he's always eating the same sandwich.
I think it's a different sandwich.
Oh, and here's Robert Kerman here. And well known, he was in Cannibal Holocaust, Rogerio Dodato's Cannibal Holocaust, but also infamous for his appearances in porn films such as Debbie Does Dallas. Now, you didn't know that at the time,
I did
did
not
you?
know.
No.
It wouldn't have affected my my casting of him.
No, he's very good, actually.
Yeah, he was a terrific actor. He was
And this is a great shot because he just passes right by him. I mean, and you almost don't realize, like, what did they just pass by?
Yeah, I you know, in no way in the same universe as Spielberg, but that's where I learned that, is the character with the threat directly behind him and he's not really paying attention. Roy Scheider in Jaws, chumming into the water, and then also in Duel.
Oh, sure.
When Dennis Weaver goes into the phone booth and here comes this massive truck, and he almost bites it in that scene.
I know, it's so close.
Get the 12 gauge out of my car. Now.
Here we're Steadicam.
Now, the alleyway that we're coming up into is, again, that's obviously a practical location.
Somewhere in the valley. There's a guy named Sean Clark who does Horror's Hallowed Grounds, and he actually found all of the locations for this movie.
Oh, really?
20 years afterwards, except for this one.
Oh, really? Couldn't find this one?
Could not find it.
Please!
Now, there's a wonderful combination of puppet, a guy in a suit. I mean, there's a lot of different... And I just think that the sound design is exquisite here. Just all the different gun blasts and the light shining through them when the guns go through.
I wish that had worked a little better, but yeah, it's cool.
Smile.
There's the warp zoom.
Yeah, the warp zoom.
Got to do it. Any first-time filmmaker is going to want to do the warp zoom.
That's another Jaws classic. Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're dollying and zooming at the same time to change the focal length in the shot as you're watching it. And look at him.
Yeah, he's just like, I don't know how to handle this.
This is the mark of a great actor, is where he's doing things that you haven't told him to do, but it's very clear. Look at it.
He's confused. He's like, what in the hell am I supposed to do?
Well, and
I
think he snaps at that moment.
Yeah, this is it. He's made the decision that he doesn't want to go on anymore after this.
I want to give a shout out to my college roommate, Doug Lambeth, who this dormitory is named after.
I was always wondering who Lambeth Hall was named
after. And here is my brother, Chris, the guy in the red shirt here with the basketball.
Oh, there you go.
Look how thin he is. He still gets residual checks on this.
Really? He is officially credited.
Hey, bro, I just got a check for $7.31. Oh, I can see the monofilament there.
Oh yeah, the movie's ruined now. It's on the monofilament. It's over.
Now this was all shot by Steve Miner.
Oh, this is all.
Yep.
Oh, so you didn't even have the fun of being able to do this?
I didn't say I wasn't there. I just didn't shoot it. Their hair is all dry.
Yeah, well, yeah. Oh, she had hair? I'm sorry. I wasn't sorry.
That's a good bit where that guy, it looks like he's really going to bite it. Yeah, Steve had given me my first job, and I just asked him, would you do second unit? Because I got a little montage sequence, and he said, be happy to.
Yeah, because he was doing House right around the same time as this,
well,
or
House
right
was before this,
yeah.
And that was my first screen credit, was House, with William Cadden,
and
George Wendt, and Kay Lenz. There's a cute transition here with the flash bulb here.
Right, did you? Yeah.
And I can't remember if we actually fired a flash bulb from off camera into the mirror, or if that was an optical.
Now, another emotional high point of the film here is this sequence where you realize what's happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
You told me something interesting about this scene, about Jason Lively's reaction to the recorder here.
Yes. Jason is a goofball. I love him to death, but he is kind of a force of nature in a lovely way, but in a way that sometimes needs corralling. And so he's always quick with fun and humor. But this scene, it was very important that he take it seriously. So if you look frame right there between the coffee cup and the blue book, you will see a picture of corpses. Probably Dachau, maybe Auschwitz, from the Holocaust in World War II. And there's one or two other photographs from the Holocaust that, as he's looking at it now.
Yeah, he's looking,
And what I did was, I said, Jason, this is a really serious scene. And I'm just going to put some pictures around the room, and I want you to, when I tell you, and so I'm actually telling him this since we added this out later. I said, look at, see, now he's looking at, I had another one up on the wall, and there are pictures of war atrocities, because it was really important to me that he take this seriously.
Well, it clearly worked.
Yeah.
And that's stuff a lot of directors don't even think to do. I mean, a lot of directors would never think, just, you're an actor, act it. But, you were there to...
Well, I'm not, it's not to say that I'm, that all the decisions I made in this movie, or all of my directing, was terrific. But in this case, I think it worked.
Good luck with
And
Cynthia.
the line that he has is, "I walked." That broke my heart when I first saw this movie. It's like, oh, he finally gets to walk, and of course he's dead.
Yeah. I want to mention Barry DeVore's on there. I love that sting, that music sting.
Yeah.
I've really come to appreciate this score more and more over the years. It wasn't my cup of tea in the sense that I've always loved big orchestral scores, and Jerry Goldsmith and
Elmer Bernstein,
John Williams
stuff like
and
that,
Elmer Bernstein. And Barry's, working with synthesizers, and we didn't have the money to do a big orchestral score, but it really is, in a way, the glue that holds it. I mean, there's a lot of strands that hold this together, but I really appreciate the score more than I used to. And this was like I said to Bob New, the DP, and the art department. It's like, he's going into hell.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different colors.
Yeah. Because I don't think a boiler room necessarily has orange light or yellow light, but.
Well, hey, Nightmare on Elm Street, boiler rooms and those are not exactly subtle either, so, Yeah.
That's a dummy.
I would hope that'd be an awkward as hell position to lie in for any extended period of time.
Yeah.
That would suck. Again, it just drives home. It's like, okay, if he can die, anyone can die.
Yeah. I like what you said before. All bets are off.
Yeah.
And that is the actual Beta House.
Oh, we're going to see an appearance here from an actor who has gone on as John J. York.
John J. York. He's on a soap?
Yeah, General Hospital. He plays Max Scorpio.
Are you a General Hospital fan?
And he was also in Werewolf. He was the Werewolf TV show on Fox for one season. He was the protagonist on that show as well.
And now we're coming up to, I don't know if it's in this bit, but maybe my least favorite thing in the movie. And it's nothing against David Miller and the gang, but this puppet dog, I just... if this was a real director's cut, I would probably suck another 40 minutes of air out of the movie, but...
Well, you're different now.
That having been said, I would definitely... Here we come.
And as soon as he looks at it... Well, you can't have a real dog do that, so, what are you going to do? That's,
I know, it's just the damn puppet dog drives me nuts.
We're going to get done, dudes.
I'm not sure he even knew what the line meant.
No, but we all know what it meant.
We all know what it meant. Now, the driver of that bus, well, we will see his demise briefly.
Yeah.
Spoiler. Is Billy Arter, who was actually the head of transportation.
Now, see, that would scare me. The head of transportation is the guy who completely totals the bus.
He actually drives safely. It's a movie. They didn't really crash the bus.
Hey, where's the transportation crew? Oh, he's over there wrecking the bus. Now, this is just wonderful because he hears the knock on the door, and he's like, should I answer it? Go through with it? Go answer it?
Oh, God.
But the way you set this up, I've always admired so much because you don't give away everything as to what's really happening here, the subtext of what's really going on in the scene.
Yeah.
You see the taper on the door, and you're still like, what exactly? And
what?
They got alfalfa. They get in through your mouth.
Tom's a handsome devil, too, isn't he?
Yeah. Those rugged. He always gets the ladies, and he always gets the action in his movies. Even in The Fog,
Right.
He picks up Jamie Lee Curtis, and 10 minutes later he's in bed with her.
There you go, and he's a good 20 years older than she is.
No kidding. This is a great shot. I have to ask you about this and setting it up.
This actually, Tom paid me a real compliment because my friend Shane Black, who I wrote Monster Squad with, went to school with, had written Lethal Weapon, and he was on the set of this movie quite a bit because he was my pal, and I put him in a scene, and he really liked what Tom was doing, and he recommended Tom to Dick Donner for Lethal Weapon, and that's That's how Tom came to be in Lethal Weapon. But Tom apparently actually told Dick about this little sequence. He said, this kid Dekker, he's got this cool shot where he's telling the story by pushing into the oven.
Yeah.
Now, for some reason, this bus is moving.
Right. So you're actually moving it down the street, but for the life of you couldn't tell.
Yeah, why? It's black outside. Why we did that, I have no idea.
To help him get in character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the physics of this just doesn't work at all.
Uh-huh.
And there's Puppet Dog, but I pulled my George Miller thing here there. You see that?
With the fake eyeballs.
Yes. Those are balloons.
Hi, Walt. Well, Detective Ray Cameron, son of a...
Oh, great scene. And I want to ask about Dick Miller. How did Dick Miller end up in the picture?
Dick Miller is like a good luck charm for filmmakers. He's in the first Terminator. He, obviously Joe Dante used him once, and so I have to have him. He's my good luck charm for my entire career.
And Roger Corman, long history with him.
Obviously, and he's just money in the bank.
One of those actors that just delivers every line like
Absolutely.
You believe it just instantly.
And the rapport between these two guys.
Oh, it's great.
This is a perfect example of actually. This is another 10-minute film school. Hire the right guys, and stand back and shut up.
Yeah, you're right. They sell an entire history together, these two guys.
You really feel like they know each other.
Yeah.
By the way, you gotta watch out for this baby. Once you light the pilot, it goes out, and it plays hard.
It's hard to get like a son of a bitch.
So, if you just let me have the requisition.
Oh.
and he plays us all with humor.
Yeah.
And again, this is I've talked to Tom about this. I've come to the realization that Detective Cameron has gone insane.
Yeah, he's nuts. He's really gone.
That he's been on a thin rope for many, many years.
Yeah.
Right on the edge of the abyss. But seeing that, but confronting that axe murderer in the alley.
Yeah.
And blowing his head off and seeing these creeps squiggle away, I think something has just turned in him, and
he doesn't care anymore now. It's just, you're right. Yeah, that's again, he's become the loose cannon in the picture.
Can we cut this shot out? Can we just remove?
Now, see, here's what I was.
It always gets a big laugh too, though. So I don't know. It's a cheesy movie.
It works. This is what I was talking about. The dog, the way he enters this bus is just kind of tentatively, and he doesn't move. It's great. It's really, really good.
He's a fine actor. I don't think he's with us anymore.
No, probably.
But the guy our animal wrangler actually went on to do Babe.
Oh, well, there you go.
So,
Suzanne Snyder.
The lovely Susie Snyder.
Who a couple years later would appear in Return of the Living Dead Part 2.
Oh, is that true?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of the Return. I'm going to be candid. I'm not a big fan of the Return of the Living Deads because I'm such a Romero acolyte.
See, I like the first one a lot. And I'm not so much of the other ones, but
I was actually surprised that Suzanne did this part because it's not that. That's it.
Yeah, that's the last you see of her.
And she was, I think, the lead in Weird Science, or the female lead.
Oh, yeah.
In which Jill Whitlow appeared as Perfume Girl.
So the roles are reversed here.
Exactly.
She gets the. Now here we start seeing, all the makeup guys really all done up.
Now this gentleman actually was an amputee.
Yeah.
And you see him earlier as one of the frat boys. In fact, every time you see the frat boys, you see him. And it was really important to me that we set him up so that when we get to this bit here, you'll see as he turns over here that he is missing a leg.
Yeah.
And that's real. He really doesn't have that leg.
I heard about how that happened. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was at some motorcycle and accident. Like he went up against a guardrail and it literally ground the leg off. Oh. Just a horrible thing.
Oof.
If that's not the prettiest shot of her in the whole movie, I don't know what. I mean, that was just
we have to. We're on a precarious verge of fetishism here, but I have to say that I don't know if I would do the hair that way if I had it to do over again.
1986, man.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think this is why Kubrick tended not to make contemporary movies. His movies generally were the future or the past.
Mm-hmm. So it could be whatever. Either you had an established precedent,
and it holds, and that's why his films hold up because they're kind of in their own world. So when you're doing something, particularly something that's like this young people, 80s culture,
that's great.
Puppethead. Non-Puppethead. Although he's got a little creep on it. He's got
on the tongue.
Half a creep on his tongue there.
Yeah, that's great.
That's probably the best of the exploding
head
heads in the
rips,
movie.
yeah. But again, when you were saying, I mean, this film is dated as 1986, so it's definitely of its time, and it reflects that. So it's not like...
That was a good example there, where it's like, Jason, as soon as the camera's to you, say the line. And so
Right.
there's like this beat.
You do that.
Believe me, every film after this, I had that stopwatch.
Sorry.
Oh, here comes
No, it was
one of the great favorite...
hold this, you feel better.
And he really sells it.
Yeah.
It's not a joke line. He means it.
No, he means it.
I got good news and bad news,
Oh.
girls. The good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
Are you surprised by how famous that line has become?
Well, it's not like I wrote it and said, this is it. This is the tagline. Everyone's going to love this. So, audiences make things their own. I mean, I'm proud of it, but...
Well, it's funny. We've seen the film now a couple times together in front of a live audience, and they pick up on lines I hadn't thought of before.
But there was a big thing in the 80s where action characters would, shoot somebody, and it's the Arnold thing.
Oh, yeah. Blow off some steam Bennett or something like that.
Exactly. And it got so tiresome. And in a way, this thing, Miller Time, that's coming up here, is kind of a spoof of that. It's
right.
like,
Which makes no sense
when you
at all.
shoot somebody, you just say something that appears to be amusing, but actually really is just stupid.
Yeah, it's like...
Because it's not Miller Time. You're supposed to have finished your work day.
Right. It'd be
the
Miller
lumberjacks
Time.
are supposed to be done before they have their...
Yeah, it's Miller Time later when he's about to blow it up, because it's like, not now.
But I like that. It's kind of a spoof of 80s action movies.
Right.
Shoot somebody and then say something stupid.
But the problem is, what kind of backfires for you is you got Tom Atkins saying it, so it comes off cool.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Now, of course, this sequence has a shot in it which has become absolutely famous. You got to ask about how you invented this shot.
Before we get there, I think we rebuilt this room at Woolworths for some of these shots because we did a couple of days reshoot, 4 or 5 days, which we'll talk about in a minute. That's a split diopter, which I really love. Guys like Brian De Palma use it all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, you can have 2 focal lengths at the same time.
Right. Here we go.
Well, what we did, we just put the camera on one side of the dolly and put Tom on the other side of the dolly and just spun it around.
And then you cut in successively.
Then we put on a different lens and we did it again. We put a different lens and did it again. It really works.
Oh, it's great. And it's not, and I remember Tom commenting, he's just like, well, this seems like an interesting shot. I mean, that people were just like, wow, I've not seen that before.
Well, those are the moments where the crew...
Who's that guy behind the one guy back there? It was, for a brief second, could have sworn we saw somebody. Yeah, him. Who's the guy back there?
Oh, God. Bill Carotes.
Bill Carotes.
Oh, God. Let's not talk about him.
All right. I've heard stories, but if you don't want to get into it, I understand.
Jeez. But yeah, no, Tom spinning around. Those are the kind of moments where you sense from the crew that they think you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because you're doing something special. It's not just talking heads and, master and coverage.
Right. I mean, you were really moving the camera around and coming up with...
But I think in that particular moment, and other times in the movie where I was doing these stylish things and they kind of went, maybe this isn't just, your basic programmer.
I want to ask you a question about that. This was your first film as a director, and you're obviously not just going through the paces here. You're really trying to do something creative and exciting. Did you feel confident all the time? How long did it really take for you to feel like, I'm in control here, I've got this?
I think I err on the side of humility. I mean, I think any director who thinks they know everything and they've got it nailed, I think they're putting on a little bit of an act. Because there's going to be good days and bad days.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like you do, like everybody has in their jobs and in their lives. And there were some days here where I was a little underwater, and then there were other days where, like, for instance, Tom spinning around that room, I was like, I know what I'm doing, man. This whole shed scene was actually added after a disastrous preview we had. The movie just didn't have enough action. There just wasn't enough. It needed to be goosed. And the studio executive, thankfully, said, we're going to give you some more money in a couple more days. And he actually suggested the tool shed. And I thought, okay, I think I can make that work. That's cool.
So was the tool shed, was there any other sequence that was added, or was it just that one that you added?
The zombie feet walking up the fire escape we added.
Oh, okay.
And some bits there in that living room area.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, now it's transitioned fully. They are the heroes of the picture. Tom
Look at her. She is kick-ass.
She's a badass.
Yeah.
Because our former hero is downstairs getting ready to take his own life.
There's the Bradster.
Bradster's still lying there. Which goes back to that line. He's like, well, Brad's an asshole. Yeah, I know.
It's also cool the way that Jason sort of takes control. Get out of the house.
Yeah, now. He's Tom Atkins now.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's become Tom Atkins.
Exactly. He's actually replicating a moment that Tom had done just moments earlier.
Oh, yeah. Call the police. You do that now. Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, that's right. It's the same framing and the same camera movement. Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
This was a set at Woolworths, I believe. There was an actual basement at Woolworths. It was a 3-story building.
Wow.
So we had lots of room to build things.
Now, you have some stop-motion animation coming up here with the big Pilo creeps.
Yes. I think that's what we called it, actually, the
Pilo
Pilo
creeps.
creeps. I think so. No, it was Wallow creeps.
The Wallow creeps, okay.
But I was always a huge stop-motion fan. Ray Harryhausen was a hero of mine when I was a kid.
There you go.
Willis O'Brien and Jim Danforth, and I wouldn't, think twice about using it for this because it was kind of the only way to do it.
Yeah, certainly back then,
at that time,
obviously, yeah.
Wonderful.
And would a CG shot be maybe more believable? Well,
you're never going to, I mean...
This was added, by the way.
Oh, that?
Yeah.
That's a great moment.
That was added, just a little goof. And now you see, when we cut back to him, see how it's different?
Yeah, so everything's just a little bit, yeah.
But CG in the wrong hands, it's like a weapon.
It's like any, I know.
It can be very dangerous.
You give it to someone like Peter Jackson or James Cameron or Steven Spielberg, they use it as a tool like they would anything else, properly and in the right context.
And this is a moment, it's, again, one of those moments that I kind of did subconsciously and only kind of have gotten appreciated more recently. He's winking at him because he got the girl.
Yeah.
They're talking about losing their high school sweethearts, and they're both romantics. That's kind of what they share. And he sees him with this beautiful girl, and he gives him a little wink, like, "You did it, kid."
Yeah, you did it, kid. I didn't, but you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't looked at that. I hadn't looked at it that way before. That's right. Yeah.
8, 7, 6,
5, 4.
He's got creeps crawling
all
on him.
over.
He just doesn't give a shit.
No, he's not. It's Tom Atkins. He could care less.
I used to have that little Coke can, that little miniature Coke can.
Oh, yeah?
I used to have that on my desk, yeah.
Detective, thrill me.
Yeah, I gotta ask about the explosion. I mean, this is obviously the real location here, so...
Yeah. I just want to point out...
there's a great... Yeah, the show.
That when Jason comes to him and he's about to commit suicide, he basically was planning to do the exact thing that he just did. He was waiting for enough gas to fill the room to blow it up, and then he would light his lighter.
Right.
So essentially, from the moment that Jason comes to get, Chris comes to get him,
call back to the rose.
There's the rose, yes.
Yeah.
He's just sort of gunning for that to complete what he started.
Right, and he did, but in a much better fashion.
Yeah. Or did he?
Well, yeah, that's true. See that, then which leads us into
exactly. This is called the director's cut, although nothing in the film so far is different from its theatrical presentation. Until now. In the theatrical version, I had a fight with the studio about the ending. They didn't quite get what you're about to see. It wasn't their fault. I showed it to them before it was ready, before the optical was complete. But in the theatrical version, Zombie Dog, Puppet-Head, shows up and creeps Cynthia and kind of destroys everything that we've set up with these characters. But this is what I originally planned. We shot it. We previewed it before the optical was done, and people didn't get it, and the studio asked me to have a cheap scare. And I always hated the cheap scare ending, and I always wished that this was the real ending of the movie. And when Sony kindly came to us and said, we would like to do the DVD of Night of the Creeps, I said, can I put the ending back on? And God bless them, they said yes.
Yeah. So what we're seeing for the first time ever now is what you originally wanted.
Exactly. We should note, though, that this was on the TV version, so people who've only seen this on USA Up All Night or watched it at 3 o'clock.
So this is their ending. It always has been.
Right.
But for anyone who had the VHS or the Laserdisc,
or saw it in the movie theater,
right, the dog ending was the real ending.
Right.
So, but it's interesting seeing it over the years, half and half. Half the people think this was the ending the whole time.
But I just think it's night and day.
Oh yeah,
I think that one is cheap in every way,
and it ends it on a sour note.
Exactly. Whereas this opens up
a whole world of possibilities.
Exactly. David Stipe also did this effect sequence.
So they've finally shown back up after 30 some odd years almost.
Yeah.
Still,
and I would see this on television, the TV quote, what used to be the quote TV ending, and every time I looked at it, I got chills and said, "Oh man, that's so cool."
Because now it just cuts. We've seen that they're back, and it's like anything that happens after that, you tell me what happens.
Now what?
Yeah,
exactly.
So Fred, the movie, here it is. So many years later, it's 23 years later after this film came out, and it's just had this groundswell of support over the years. Fans passing copies back and forth to one another, seeing it on TV, making copies, bootlegs, the whole 9 yards. How does it feel now that the film's finally going to get a legitimate means of exposure to a whole new audience?
Well, it's hugely gratifying. Hugely gratifying because, it was not released particularly well, both in the P&A, prints and ads, and the number of prints. Although it found some cult following very early on in Europe, mostly, strangely enough. But there was this real sense of anticlimax, particularly when you work as hard as any filmmaker does to do something like this, and to have written it and directed it, and it was my first movie. I mean, it would have been much more heartbreaking had I not gone directly into Monster Squad.
Yeah, because you were already working on that full blown when this came out.
Yeah, but still. It was very disappointing, and it was kind of like this slowly building wave where I would hear about people loving the movie, and it's just tremendously gratifying because it's delayed gratification, but very gratifying.
Because as we're sitting here, it's less than 24 hours after a wonderful screening at the Alamo Drafthouse here in Austin, Texas.
That's right, which was really interesting because it wasn't kind of a yeehaw kind of crowd. I really got the sense of a kind of a respect for the movie, and I'm hearing this from the cast, and I'm hearing it from you, that there's a certain artistry. Again, I have a lot of problems with this movie. The puppet dog head, mostly.
Yeah, but still, I mean, come on. Yeah.
And some of the performances, I have to take the blame for anything that's wrong with it. But there's some really good stuff in it too, and there's a kind of an elegance, and a sophistication to it that a lot of films of its ilk, I think, don't have. I say with all modesty. But it's because I've come to realize it myself by looking at it again. It's like, oh yeah, interesting. That's
well, you're separated enough from it to a point now. I mean, you can really kind of, you'll never be 100%, because even Spielberg says, as well as Jaws turned out and as well as everyone, he still doesn't erase the memories of making it for him. It was so difficult. But.
Exactly. We just saw the sound credit there. I just wanted to point out that the gentleman who mixed this movie mixed every episode of the original Star Trek.
That's good history.
Yeah. Todd Ale.
Got to ask about the stroll from the Diamonds. That's a great choice. Yeah. That creep. I mean, was it just because it had that eerie sort of?
Yeah, that kind of bluesy. There was another song in the '60s that always gave me the creeps. It's the chord progression. It's that creepy chord progression, and it also seems to be a song about zombies.
Yeah, it's like a stroll. And,
Here they come.
Yeah, and you can almost picture them singing it as they're walking, and it's just this really slow, creepy song. The Kappa Deltas, there's Suzanne Snyder.
I was very happy with this when we said, "How are we going to do the credits?" I said, "Let's 1959, there's the sorority, there's the fraternity. The Kappa Deltas, I don't know if I mentioned this, I named after the Kappa Delta sorority at UCLA, with whom I was friendly for a number of years.
No, there's, Beal Carotes.
Look, I don't want to talk about Beal Carotes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm still sad. Maybe 23 years from now we'll talk about
Jesus. There's my brother.
Yep.
And Dick Miller's the last credit. That's cool.
Yeah, that should be the way.
And look how crisp that is. I really want to thank Heather Olson, a guy named Bill Carides, who supervised technically. I mean, this movie just looks better than it ever has. I'm just thrilled.
So, Fred, I just want to thank you for doing this. This has been an honor and a thrill for, just being able to be here with you on this, and I'm so glad it's coming out, man.
Thanks, man. You're the greatest.